Today we're talking houses and if you should buy or rent one. Now, if you don't already know me, my name is Zach Satin. I'm a local realtor here in South Florida, providing you with the best info in the real estate game. If you haven't already, go ahead and slam the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified when I put out a new video every single week. Since I'm really sure a lot of people watching this video right now are currently renting, we're going to go ahead and start off with the renting pros and cons first. We're going to hop straight into it, the pros, and this is not going to be in any particular order. For starters, when you're renting, you don't need to deal with any crazy maintenance or repair costs. All of this stuff is usually handled by the landlord, and if it's not, maybe you have to chip in a little something, but it's nothing crazy as compared to owning a home. This can somewhat give you a peace of mind that even if something gets damaged in the home, it's not for you to worry about, but the landlord. Another really big pro about renting, depending on your situation and where you're located, is that you usually have a plethora of amenities to go to. So when you're looking to buy a house, you might want a pool, but it might not be in your budget. But if you go and rent somewhere that's in a community that has a pool, now all of a sudden you can use the pool. Not to mention you don't need to do any maintenance to that pool because the landlord takes care of it. There may be even other amenities too, like tennis courts, basketball courts, parks, whatever. Which are just other things that you don't need to maintenance too. Another big thing about renting is that you do not need to save a huge down payment. This is a big hurdle for a lot of people when it comes to buying a house. And although you only need as low as 3.5%, it can still really add up on people. Remember, when you're renting, you only need around 3 times the rent, the first, last, and security, and you're in. On top of this, renting is way more flexible than owning. Especially when you're like relocating to a different city or a state, you might find it way easier to go ahead and rent for a year, make sure you actually like it, and then go ahead and buy. Because it's really a lot easier to break a lease than it is to resell the home that you just bought. Also, when you're renting, you don't really have a huge concern for that home's property value. After all, what does it matter to you if that home's value goes up? It doesn't. That stuff only affects the landlord. And sometimes renting can be even cheaper than owning your own home, depending on the landlord. Because a lot of landlords, they could have bought a long time ago, so their profit differences are really way different from like a landlord that just bought a house just now. So you'll find it cheaper maybe to go and rent from one of those landlords than to own. Especially a lot of apartment complexes that have built them a long time ago and have really no need to raise the rates unless they just decide to, because that's where the market is. But they can usually keep it low, and that way they can get more people in, which brings them more profit in the end because they have less vacancy. You also don't need to feel any pressure to upgrade when you rent a home. Obviously, it's not yours. What you care if the kitchen is remodeled or if it has new floors or new AC. None of that stuff really matters to you because it's not really your own. You don't really care so much about it. Only you don't need to pay any property taxes on that home. This is a big thing that can really run up your bill because, especially here where I am in Port St. Lucie, Florida, we have some of the highest property taxes in Florida. So being able to skip out on that is really good and really nice to have. Let's go ahead and hop straight into the cons of renting. First things first, you're not making any type of equity gain when you go ahead and rent. Renting, in my opinion, is similar to throwing money into a fire. That money goes to the landlord and then it's gone. You just go straight to him. He pays his loan with it. He gets wealthy and you don't. When you have a loan, however, on a home, you're consistently paying off that loan. At the same time, your house is getting worth more and more and more. So you're really putting yourself way ahead in terms of wealth. However, when you're renting, all you're doing is paying off somebody else's loan, which puts them more ahead in terms of wealth, which then leads them to go buy more properties, which means them to get even more wealthier, and the cycle will just keep continuing. This is why real estate is such a good investment for those landlords. Another thing when renting is you're going to have a bunch of rules and regulations to follow. I know it's annoying, but that's just how it is. A lot of landlords don't want you to have no pets. If you do have a pet, they want to charge you extra. They want to charge you a couple $100 for a pet fee. They want to charge you an extra $50 a month per pet. All these rules and regulations that just get very annoying over time. And on top of this, you usually can't make any changes to the rental. You want to put in a Nest thermostat, you better go ahead and check with the landlord first. You want to paint the walls, you better check with the landlord first. You want to just anything, check with the landlord first, because you cannot do anything that would change anything in the house. You can't even change an outlet without checking with the landlord first, because he has to confirm everything. And sometimes your monthly rent could honestly be costing you more than a mortgage would. Imagine paying 2, 3, 4K a month in rent. That's just getting thrown into a fire. You can even less than that to own a home depending on where you are and what you're doing. Another problem that a lot of people try to avoid that kind of gets hidden away is there's always going to be rising rental rates. People will constantly complain and say that home prices are just so bad and they keep rising and they can't afford a home, but they don't realize that the same thing is happening to rental prices. Just because home prices go up doesn't mean rental prices are going to stay down here. Rental prices are always going to go up too. It's all real estate at the end of the day. If this one goes up, this one goes up too. And honestly, if this one comes down, this one's going to stay up for way longer because there's always people need somewhere to stay. If they can't afford this, then somehow they gotta afford this, and it's just a whole mess. And honestly, finally, renting is just not very stable living. It isn't really something you can do for the rest of your life and be genuinely happy unless you're in a very special situation. I mean, at any moment, things could just hit the fan. I've seen renters get kicked out and have nowhere to go because the landlord decided to sell that house and cash in on their equity. And some of these landlords couldn't even afford any payments on any other rentals because the inflation had gone up so much that the 2.2 that they were only paying $1,200 for now costs $1,900. It's a really, really sad thing, which is why I always recommend looking to buying. Depending on your situation, it could be really good for you. So let's get right into that now. All right, the pros and cons of buying, my favorite part. I can't wait for this. So just like before, I'm going to do the pros first, no particular order. And at the end of the video, I'm going to do kind of a short recap, so make sure you watch all the way into the end. So for starters, obviously with the home, as soon as you buy that house, you're already gaining equity like that. You're already getting more and more wealthy every day, every week, every month, every year. You're getting more and more wealthy because you're paying that loan off. And as you're paying the loan off and as time is passing, the home is becoming worth more and more and more and more. Say you buy a house now for $300,000, in 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years or whatever, it could be worth $500,000 plus. And at the same time, you paid off that loan. Let's say you bought it for $300,000, you've gotten it down, now you only owe $100,000. The home is worth $500,000, $600,000 now. You're cashing in on $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 just for you that you get to keep, all because that you locked in and got that equity going and got that loan paid off instead of throwing that money into a fire like you do when you're renting. On top of this, you're gonna have a much more consistent payment every month. You know, every single month when you own a home is gonna be more or less the same. Sometimes the insurance goes up, sometimes the taxes go up, but more or less the same because your principal and interest are always gonna be the same. So you know more or less this is what my payment's gonna be for the next 30 years. But with renting, you never know when there's going to be any type of spike in the rental prices, like I said. And those landlords might just come to you and say, hey, here's where the market is. We're going to shoot your rent up $700. I know you can't afford it, but figure it out. You also avoid inflation in some type of way because since you don't need to repay on that home, even if it became worth more, you're still stuck at that $300,000 payment, which means that your monthly payment's going to be way cheaper than somebody who buys it later on. You know what I'm saying? Because your home future worth is $500,000, let's say, but you're still paying that $300,000 worth. Meanwhile, let's say you were renting out that $300,000 house, and then 5 years later you're still there, and now it's worth $500,000, and the rental prices have gone up. Your landlord's gonna come to you and say, hey, we need you to pay more money, even though if you just owned it, it's like those landlords are owning it. They still pay the same amount every month, but they know that they could charge you more and get more profit if they just did it like that. But if you were owning it, you would just pay the same thing no matter what, even if the inflation hit. A big thing that people complain about when buying homes is that, oh, the interest rate's too high right now, blah, 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 blah. But interest rates are always changing. We have a saying, it's date the rate, marry the house, because you really are only dealing with the interest rates for a temporary amount of time. Okay, let's say I get a house now, it's 6% interest rate. I might not be too happy about it because my friend bought a house during the pandemic for only 2% interest rate. But maybe next year, who knows, my interest rate could come back down to like 3-4% and I could just refinance it to that. And I'll be happy because I bought that house for a good price. And now I got it even lower because I waited and held on to that house before the prices went up and I got the better rate. Not to mention, you also avoid all the rules and regulations that renters have to deal with. If you want 20 pets when you own a home, you could have 20 pets. Nobody's gonna say anything. You might get a couple side eyes if you're walking them down the road, but nobody's gonna say anything. It's your house. You have to do whatever you want with it. But if I try to bring 20 pets to a landlord and say, hey, these are all my pets, please let me live here, they're gonna say, okay, well, if we do $50 per pet, 50 times 500, well, it's gonna be an extra $1,000 a month if you wanna have all 20 pets here. And we're gonna have to charge $500 up front as a pet fee for each one of them towards your security deposit. And that's a lot. I mean, you could even paint the walls hot pink, whatever you want. I'm gonna judge you for that, but you can go ahead and do it because it's your house. So forget the rules and regulations when you own a home because it's all your rules and regulations, nobody else's. Finally, owning is just much more stable. If you're in an area that you really, really like and you're like, okay, I'm really gonna stay here for the next couple years. I mean, even only 2 years, that's still enough time to get some equity. I'm gonna stay here for only 2 years. I'm gonna stay here for 4 years. I could see myself being here for the next 10, 20 years. Go ahead and buy, settle down, start building your equity, start building your family, because that is the best thing for you to do. You need to build up that wealth, and this is the best way to do it. Not to mention, nobody's gonna kick you out. You could live in that home for 20 years and just decide to sell it because you want to sell it. You don't just get kicked out of it because your landlord decides to sell it and you have nowhere to go. You'll always have somewhere to go. Now, of course, buying isn't always peaches and daisies like we all like to make it sound like it is. So let's go ahead and get to the cons of buying. First off, you're gonna need a down payment, which usually if you're a first-time home buyer, you can get it as low as 3.5% down. Sometimes even 0% down because there are some special programs out there. You can also get grants, etc. A bunch of things you can do to help bring down that down payment, but you will usually need around 3.5%. On top of this, you gotta pay closing costs. However, in this market, it's much more likely that you can get a seller to pay the closing costs for you and not have to worry about that. So let's say for instance, you want to buy a $400,000 house. You're gonna have to go ahead and save around $14,000. Like I said, there are some first-time homebuyer grants and special programs that help really bring this down. But just for the sake of the video, we're gonna go ahead and say it's around $14,000 and just keep it simple. And honestly, this just isn't that bad. So let's consider that you would rent a $400,000 house, and for somewhere around that price, you're probably looking at maybe a 3.2 or 4.2. So you're probably spending around $2,500 to $3,000 a month in my location to rent that home. So really, if we do first house and security, you're looking at about $9,000. So the difference between a $14,000 down payment and a $9,000 down on a rental, which by the way, that $9,000 gets thrown in the trash. That $14,000 goes towards the loan. So we're looking at a $5,000 difference. That isn't really much in hindsight, that you would have this home. It would be your home besides the rental just throwing that $9,000 away. And like I said before, when you do buy, you're building that equity, and as maybe at first it'll take a while for the equity to start rolling in, but the more and more you own the home, the faster and faster you're gonna go up in equity, and it's just gonna shoot up. So that $5,000, you're gonna make it back really fast, I promise. Yeah, we did say your monthly payment more or less stay the same, but there are still some things that can change it up a little, like your insurance, taxes, utilities. These things are always changing, so you can pay more or less depending on what's really going on with the home and how your insurance, taxes, utilities, all that stuff is looking on your side. But it won't change as much as a spike in rent will. On top of all of this, yeah, you will be responsible for any repairs or damages to the house, and you are responsible for maintaining it. I mean, you could really live in a hole, but it's really up to you how you want to live. I would think you'd want to live clean and neat and, you know, be able to live comfortably in your home, but it's, you know, it's up to you. You do what you want to do. But always remember that things could happen. You have to fix those things. It's normal. What's always recommended is that you set aside at least 6 months of pretty much emergency funds. So let's say you make, I don't know, you make like $4,000 or $5,000 a month, we'll just say. You make good money. You would want to set aside, say you make $5,000 a month, you know, you want to set aside around $30,000. That way you have that 6 months of emergency aid. If something goes wrong, if your AC goes bad, you go, okay, let me take out of here, let me fix my AC. You need a new roof, okay, let me fix my roof. Oh, I lost my job, let me go ahead and set this aside and pay my bills so I can get another job. Always have that set aside to protect yourself. Recap, should you buy or sell a home? It depends. It really does depend very heavily on your situation. If you're just looking to settle down in a new location, but maybe you're not too comfortable with the location yet, maybe it's a whole nother state and you have no idea if you're gonna like it there, go ahead, rent for a year, deal with the losing the money, whatever. It's just a year. See if you like it. If you do really like it after a whole year, go ahead and buy. If you don't like it, don't buy. Just move back from where you came from and all that yada yada stuff. But you want to make sure you like the area you're going to buy in, because if you don't, you're going to be super upset when you're like, oh my gosh, I just spent all this money, went through this whole process to buy this home. I don't even like it here. I hate it here. I don't want to be here. But if you go ahead and rent for the year, you can just say, okay, I don't like this. I need to get out of here. Just take the rental penalty and get out. Or if maybe you want to buy, but you're not quite ready there yet, you don't have enough cash saved up yet, you don't have enough money saved up yet, go ahead, maybe rent for a little bit, but make sure you're setting aside those proper reserves that you need to be able to buy the home. Make sure you get prepared, make sure you know what you want, make sure you know what you need. Meet with lenders consistently, try and get yourself pushed in the right direction, get your credit good. All this stuff is okay. As long as your end goal, honestly, is to buy, you're good. You shouldn't rush yourself into buying. You have to make sure that you're ready. Make sure you want to do it. Make sure you really, really want it, and you really work hard for it. 'Cause sometimes you do need to work hard for it, depending on the market. So make sure you want it, make sure you have what you need for it, and then go ahead and buy. But if you feel like you need to rent in the meantime, don't let people judge you for that, because that's completely normal. What I'm pretty much saying is do what you need to do, but make sure that what you need to do is going to assist you with what you want to do. Alright, thank you so much for watching. If you really like this video and it really helped you out, please go ahead and like, subscribe, ring the bell. I really appreciate it. And if you are looking to buy or rent, or if you have any additional questions, feel free to DM me here or here, and I'll be really happy to help you out. Thanks for watching. See ya.